On a cold night in 1974, a writer and his wife checked into the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. The resort was on the brink of closing for the winter season, and the couple were the only guests staying at the hotel. The man, struggling with alcoholism and writer's block, noted the eerie sensation of their isolation. One night, the man noticed something peculiar. A fire hose, which had been hanging outside their room, began unraveling itself. It began chasing the couple's 3-year-old son as he ran down the hallway, screaming and peering over his shoulder, wide-eyed and frightened. Suddenly, the man jolted, awake. It was just a nightmare. Covered in sweat, he lit a cigarette and reckoned with the terrifying imagery he'd just seen. That man was the acclaimed writer Stephen King, and it was in that very room that he began mapping out the plot of one of the most renowned horror novels ever written, The Shining. The Stanley Hotel was built by entrepreneur Freeland Oscar F.O. Stanley in 1909. Conceived as a 142-room resort intended for wealthy guests and their families. Stanley, who invented the photographic plate and the Stanley steamer motor car, moved to Colorado in 1903, hoping the sunlight and fresh air would help relieve his tuberculosis. He was weak and underweight at the time of his arrival, but hotel staff said that just after one season his health was restored, which inspired him to build the hotel and, quote, bring a level of sophistication to the region, unquote. Located on a hill overlooking the town of Estes Park, the hotel is an enormous Georgian Revival mansion with white paneling, red roofs, and Gothic-looking attic windows. The interior featuring narrow hallways with burgundy floral carpets and a grand staircase. Before it was sold in 1930 and turned into a full hotel, the estate was invitation only, a fashionable retreat for high society and friends of Stanley and his family. Harry Houdini even once performed in the building's large concert hall, complete with a trapdoor. Guests would play pool, drink, and enjoy the Stanley's popular whiskey bar. In its heyday, the Grand Hotel was a hotspot for the wealthy elite. Members of the East Coast upper class often relocated to the hotel during the summer months, enjoying parties, wine, music, and the impeccable fresh air of the Rocky Mountains. While the early years of the Stanley Hotel witnessed merriment and glamour, it soon gained attention for some spookier happenings. Stephen King wasn't the only person who witnessed some eerie occurrences in the hotel. And the room he stayed in, room 217, has a particularly haunted reputation. According to legend, an early chief housekeeper of the hotel named Elizabeth Wilson haunts this room. While lighting lanterns one evening in 1911, an explosion seriously injured her. Some reports saying the boom sent her through the floor and left her with 2 broken ankles. Though she fortunately survived the accident, Miss Wilson continues to haunt the room. Guests who've experienced Miss Wilson's presence report that the spirit's actions are rather mundane and sometimes helpful. Some have claimed to have returned to the suite to find their laundry folded neatly and their toiletries carefully organized in the restroom. It also appears as though the ghost of Miss Wilson is not a fan of male guests, and a product of her time is rather conservative. There are reports of particularly messy guests, especially men, getting poked in the ribs in the middle of the night, as well as accounts of couples feeling, quote, a cold presence, unquote, between themselves and their partner at night, pushing them apart. In particular, these reports have largely come from unmarried couples, the old-fashioned phantom clearly disapproving of premarital relations. While Stephen King did not report any sightings of Miss Wilson, he did claim to have seen a young boy in Suite 217 when he arrived. This would have been impossible, of course, seeing as the Kings were the only guests on the premises at the time. Founder F.O. Stanley died back in 1940 at age 91, but many say his spirit continues to roam throughout this old hotel. According to staff, his ghost is most often spotted in the hotel's billiard room and bar. Stanley's wife Flora has also been spotted throughout the hotel over the years, routinely heard playing the odd key or two on the piano in the music room. Another haunted hotspot of the hotel is room 401. This room is believed to house the ghost of a man named Lord Dunraven, who was a landowner in Estes Park about 20 years before the hotel was built. Many female guests who have stayed in this room have reported feeling their hair being touched, a phantom arm around their waist or shoulder, and the especially creepy sensation of a hand moving up the backs of their legs. The fourth floor of the Stanley is where guests have described seeing spectral youngsters playing throughout the hallways and hearing running and laughing. According to hotel guides, the fourth floor was where the nannies and children would spend their time back in the early days. Room 428 also hosts its own phantom. Many guests report seeing the ghost of a cowboy while staying in this room. One couple claimed to have awoken to find the cowboy ghost pacing at the end of their bed. According to the couple, they kindly asked the cowboy to leave, which he did, but not before leaning over the woman as if he was about to kiss her. Other women who have stayed in room 428 say they've also woken up to find the cowboy leaning in for a kiss. One legend claims that the ghost belongs to a cowboy from the Old West, who was hanged for murder. Room 407 is alleged to be haunted by a rather friendly and helpful ghost. Many guests report getting tucked in by some supernatural force while staying there. One boy said at night he repeatedly kicked his covers off, only to have them continue to cover him back up. Elsewhere in the hotel, guests reported the ghostly apparition of a woman in a Victorian gown, who apparently disapproved of modern dress and offered the guests some fashion advice. The property also includes a pet cemetery, and staff members claim that the ghosts of a cat and dog have been known to wander throughout the estate and around the hotel. Some believe that geological features contribute to the paranormal activities surrounding the hotel. There is actually an entire cave system below the building. Guides say that these caves contain a higher than average concentration of limestone and quartz, which might draw the spirits to the property. Regardless of what causes these spooky circumstances, the Stanley Hotel is an undeniable evidence that something has been scaring guests of the resort for many years. Even comedian Jim Carrey once stayed in room 217 while filming Dumb and Dumber, was reportedly driven out of the hotel in the middle of the night, and never returned. Of course, Stephen King was so inspired by his frightening dream that he wrote the novel which, quote, cemented his place as America's foremost horror writer, unquote, as claimed by a 1977 review in The Guardian. The book tells the story of a tormented alcoholic named Jack Torrance and his wife Wendy, who move into the fictional Overlook Hotel in Colorado, along with their son, Danny. Danny has a telepathic gift known as the Shining, which stirs up the isolated hotel's supernatural underbelly and sets in motion a series of terrifying events. The horrific story, which was published to great acclaim, was later adapted as a feature film directed by Stanley Kubrick in 1980. The movie, also set in the fictional Overlook Hotel, used multiple shooting locations, though none of it was actually filmed at the Stanley. The Timberline Lodge in Oregon was used as the exterior of the Overlook Hotel, and the interiors were shot at the Ahwahnee Hotel in Yosemite National Park. The iconic opening scene was filmed along the Going to the Sun Road in Glacier National Park in Montana. Kubrick took some liberties with the adaptation, most notably changing the layout of the hotel and adding a hedge maze to the front of the property, which those familiar with the film will recognize from its horrifying climax. In 2015, the Stanley Hotel actually added a hedge maze to its property, prompted by the success of the movie. Additionally, Kubrick changed the famously haunted room 217 to 237 in the movie. Despite these deviations from the novel, Kubrick's The Shining went on to become one of the most significant films of all time and a touchstone in popular culture. Even so, Stephen King was not a fan, notoriously calling the movie, quote, a Cadillac with no engine, unquote. He disliked the adaptation so much, in fact, that he went on to produce his own TV miniseries based on the novel in 1997. This iteration of the story actually filmed on location at the real Stanley Hotel. The legendary Stanley Hotel is undoubtedly one of the most popular haunted locations in the United States. One paranormal investigator, Richard Estep, has said that throughout his career, which has included the investigation of castles, dungeons, and many buildings older than the United States itself, the Stanley has remained at the top of his list for ghostly locations. He also notes that making this particular location unique is that unlike other haunted buildings, not many people have actually died at the Stanley Hotel. Estep believes that bloodshed and death are not the only events which could lead to a location being haunted. According to Estep, quote, people tend to haunt places where they were very happy during their lifetimes. I sense we're seeing people coming back because they deeply love this hotel, end quote. In its heyday, many friends and family of F.O. Stanley gathered at the resort to celebrate life and enjoy a relaxing vacation, substantiating Estep's theory that the spirits haunting the place might be a lot friendlier than The Shining would make them out to be. To this day, the Stanley remains in operation, and as a successful tourist destination thanks to its stunning panoramic views of the Rockies, its place in popular culture due to The Shining, and of course, its famous ghostly encounters. A spirited room can be reserved for around $500 a night, and guests may also choose to learn about the hotel's history and folklore on a variety of tours. And while the spirits who haunt the resort might be a tad friendlier than most, the question still remains. Would you stay at the Stanley Hotel?